at, I want to look at 7 signs of emotional neglect in our lives. 7 signs of emotional neglect in our lives. Let's check it out. Number 1, feelings of loneliness. Feelings of loneliness. So have you ever, and I've experienced this, I actually had this happen to me last year. It was probably one of the first times that I've had this experience be so raw and so real in my life. But it was a moment about mid-time last year where I just was overcome by like this feeling of loneliness, this feeling of not feeling like I had anybody with me in my corner. And that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me when I think about it, because I have my wife, I have my family, I have good friends, I have good relationships, but I was overcome by this strong feeling and impact of just loneliness. And in a relationship, think about how, if you're in a relationship and you feel this feeling of loneliness, how that would affect how you respond in that relationship. If you're with somebody and yet you feel alone, yet you feel that you are on your own in that, how can you really develop that emotional intimacy with someone when you have this deep core desire of loneliness? And what I'm talking about here, when we talk about the feeling of loneliness, talking about that deep core feeling that you feel on the inside. Not like the feeling like, all right, it's the weekend and I ain't got nobody to kick it with. I don't got nobody to spend any time with. I'm talking about that deep feeling that you have where you feel like there's nobody there to really have your back. I would imagine that probably David felt like this. And the way we can probably know that is when we read through the Psalms. When we read through the Psalms in the Bible, you hear David constantly talking about how alone he felt. Where was God? Where are you at in these moments that I need you? And so one of the first signs that we experience in our relationships is this feeling of loneliness, right? Number 2, what we can feel in our relationships or a feeling of emotional neglect is feeling that no one can understand you. Feeling like no one can understand you. How can you relate to that? Can you really relate to that? If you can relate to that, I'm probably somewhere along the lines, you probably dealt with this experience of emotional neglect where you just feel like no matter where you go, you just can't, you can't fit in. You don't feel like you fit in any kind of situation. And I felt like that before within my own life, right? Feeling like nobody can understand, nobody can relate to you, right? Number 3, let's check this out. Feelings of being alone, even in a relationship. Feelings of being alone, even in a relationship. So think about how this would affect us, right? If we were in a relationship and we felt alone all the time in the relationship, how do you think that the other person is really going to respond to us and really going to work with us on that? Just having these feelings of feeling like nobody's there for us, nobody's got our back, nobody's there to help us, nobody's there to be with us, and even when we're in the midst of a relationship. And I would venture to say that there's probably people out there that you feel alone and you're in a relationship. You feel like you're the only one doing this. I know, friends and people that I know that are close to me that, going through a divorce and going through these different seasons in life where they're in a marriage, they're in a relationship, but they feel like they're alone. That could probably come from the emotional neglect that you felt. You didn't know how to really connect and develop emotional intimacy with someone because you didn't get it when you were probably growing up. Number 4 is a lack of self-confidence. So we're talking about a lack of self-confidence here. So not feeling like you have the ability and the confidence to do certain things. You know, there's things that we want to do in our lives that we hold ourselves back from doing because we didn't get the emotional attention, direction, and correction that we needed when we were younger. We feel somehow that we wouldn't get, or we wouldn't be able to accomplish the things that we need to accomplish because a lot of times we didn't get what we needed when we were growing up. The first person I think about in the Bible is Moses. Think about when God called him and said, listen, I want you to go to Pharaoh and tell him to let my people go. And his first response was, who, me? Me, I can't do that. I can't talk right. I stutter. I can't do it. All throughout the Bible, there's people, Gideon, I want you to go and defeat this army. Who, me? Nah, I'm like the least of these. And when you look at their story and look at how they grew up, you see all these little pieces and all these little moments where they needed that attention growing up and they didn't get it. And that's how it kind of played out in their lives, right? Number 5, with emotional neglect, you expect it from others. You expect it from others. This is a big thing because what I mean by this is that a lot of times when we experience emotional neglect growing up, we expect that the relationships that we're going to get into are going to give us the same thing. We're going to get neglected in that relationship. This is why sometimes we can get into a relationship and we, for some reason, think that the person that we're with, the relationship that we're in, they're just not going to give us what we need in our relationship. They're not going to give us that emotional connection. They're not going to give us that emotional attention. They're not going to give us the fuel that we need emotionally. And so we just expect it from others. And look, when you expect these things from others, that's what you're going to get. That's what you're going to get. I was working with a client the other day and, she was telling me about, some issues and things that she had growing up and experiencing with her daughter and those different things. And, her daughter lying and all these things. And now she's dealing with a relationship where I'm working with her and I'm like, okay, because of what you experienced in your past and because of that expectation that you had of always being lied to, of always being deceived, I said, do you think that maybe you're transferring that into this relationship now where you expect somebody to lie to you all the time? You expect somebody to deceive you all the time. And that's why you put it out there like that. That's why you respond like that. That's why you come off like that, because you're expecting somebody to lie to you. You're expecting somebody to not be honest with you. And when we experience emotional neglect in our lives, this is what we'll put out into the world. And so we expect it from others. Number 6, we don't have the confidence that others will take note of your emotions. So we go into these relationships. When we experience emotional neglect, we can oftentimes go into these relationships and we don't have the confidence that the people that we are getting into relationships will take our emotions seriously. And here's a lesson that I learned with that, even in my own relationship, was that when I don't have the confidence that someone else is going to take my emotions seriously, I oftentimes will not express or share any of those emotions, because I feel like if you're not going to take my emotions into consideration and you're not going to handle them with care, then why would I want to share that with you? Because of what I experienced in my past. This is, I feel like, one of the wrestles that most of us as men struggle with when it comes to our emotional intelligence, our expressing our emotions. Is so often when we were growing up as young boys, we were told that we shouldn't express our emotions. We were told that the way that we express our emotions are wrong, or that it's feminine to express your emotions, so therefore you shouldn't express them. And so when we grow up hearing that message, and then we become men and we get into these relationships with women and our partners that say, I want you to open up to me, I want you to share that emotional intimacy with me. Well, if I've been emotionally neglected as a child, I don't want to risk that. I don't want to go into that territory, because that's uncharted territory, man. That's like, we're diving into the deep end on that one. And so it causes me to have this reluctance to feel confident that somebody else would really be concerned and really care really about, my emotions. And when we go into a relationship like that, we can't build. How can you build emotional intimacy like that? How can you get closer to somebody like that when you aren't confident in the fact that that other person is going to take your emotions as seriously as you take your emotions, right? You can't really expect to go into a relationship and want to do that, right? And then lastly, we oftentimes put other people's needs before your own. We put other people's needs before your own. And so this is a result of it. Think about it. If I am taught that at this young age, I don't get the attention that I need emotionally, I don't get that correction, I don't get that direction that I need emotionally in a loving way, then it teaches me that what I feel and the things that I have and the things that have happened to me are not important. And so my internal world, because nobody is paying attention to, or nobody is helping me in this arena of my life, if I'm shown that my internal world does not matter, then my natural outcome of that is that I'm going to think that everybody else's internal world matters more than mine's. Right? So when I look at it from that perspective, now I am going to try and put everybody else's needs before my own. This is one of the big eye-opening things that I realized in my life last year. Just being a people pleaser, thinking that everybody else's needs were more important than my own needs, were more important than my own internal world. And in a relationship, you cannot, think about this. In a relationship, when that is the way that I'm operating, that thinking that your needs are always more important than me, at some point, we're going to have a breakdown. Because at some point internally, my world is going to be frustrated. My internal self is going to say, look, enough of this, man. I can't keep putting everybody else's needs before my own. And then when you finally do come out and start saying and taking your own needs and taking your own needs in consideration and giving them the importance that they need, everybody else is shocked. Everybody is like surprised, like, yo, where did this come from? Like, why are you acting like this? Why are you talking like this? Why are you saying all these different things? Well, for so long, I've been putting everybody else's needs before my own. And now here I am. I need to get these needs out. And so when I'm emotionally neglected growing up and I experience this trauma as a child, I feel like my needs don't matter. And so in a relationship, that can't work, because everybody in a relationship, we both have our own needs. We both have things that need to be met. We both have situations, and we both have things and desires that we both have to express and both have to be fulfilled. That's the way the relationship works. And so when I put other people's needs before my own, ultimately I end up hurting the relationship more than I end up helping the relationship. And until I get to that point where I can turn that around, we're going to suffer and we're going to deal with those situations in a relationship. And so those are the 7 signs that I believe that we can be, and this is not all of them, but this is just kind of touching on them, right? The feelings of loneliness, the feelings that no one can understand you, the feelings of being alone, even in a relationship, that lack of confidence, the thing that you expect others to emotionally neglect you, not having confidence that others are going to take note of your own emotions, and then putting other people's needs before your own. These are some of the results that you and I can face when we experience this trauma, this childhood trauma of emotional neglect. And when we look at, like I said, going back to it, when we look at the life of David, in the beginning, we see that he was a man that he didn't get that direction. He didn't get that correction. He didn't get that attention that he needed, that loving attention that he needed in some of the most crucial times of his life. And that ended up following him throughout his whole relationship. And it's the same thing that you and I can face. And so the good thing here, though, is that we are able to, if this is something that we experience, we're able to learn how to correct this in our lives. We're able to learn how to heal this in our lives when we recognize it. And this is why, like I mentioned before in some of my previous episodes, that self-awareness is so crucial. It's the foundation to our emotional wellness, because when we're aware that these are the things that have happened to us, these are the things that we experience,